Alexander the Great didn't solve the Gordian Knot. He rejected the entire premise of the problem. In 333 BCE, Alexander stood before a knot so complex that for centuries, kings and scholars had tried to untie it by hand. The legend promised a reward. Whoever loosened it would rule Asia. Alexander spent maybe 30 seconds examining it. Then he drew his sword and cut straight through. His generals didn't applaud. They watched him commit what looked like cheating, and then watched him conquer the known world. Here's what matters. Alexander inherited a problem he didn't create. The knot belonged to the Phrygians. The rules were written by people long dead. He had maybe two choices as he saw them: untie it like everyone else, or walk away. He chose a third option nobody had considered. That decision cost him nothing and bought him the entire Persian Empire. Exhibit 1. The knot wasn't actually unsolvable. Historians later found that if you pulled the right pin from the center, the whole thing unraveled, so the puzzle had a legitimate answer. Alexander simply didn't care about legitimate answers. He cared about outcomes. In 48 hours, he'd moved his army east. In 10 years, he'd annexed 3 million square kilometers of territory. Exhibit 2. The Stoics, his contemporaries in spirit, if not in time, taught something he seemed to understand instinctively. Epictetus would later write that we don't control events, we control our judgment about them. Alexander reframed the knot from unsolvable puzzle to obstacle in my path. That's not wisdom, that's decision-making under pressure with incomplete information. Exhibit 3. Most people spend their energy on problems designed by someone else. Your boss's deadline, your parents' expectations, the market's rules. Alexander spent 0 seconds on the knot's designer. He asked one question: does this rule serve my goal? If not, I ignore it. Now you might think this is about being ruthless. It's not. It's about cost accounting. Every minute Alexander spent trying to untie that knot was a minute not spent organizing his army, negotiating with local tribes, or positioning himself for the Persian campaign. The Stoics call this preferred indifference. Some things matter more than others. Know which is which. Here's the trap most of us fall into. We inherit a problem, and we assume the problem's original framework is non-negotiable. Someone else set the rules. Someone else defined what success looks like. So we struggle within those constraints, burning energy, missing deadlines, slowly losing grip on what we actually want. Alexander asked a different question. Not how do I win this game, but is this the game I should be playing? That's radical. That's the move most people never make. And it's the core of practical Stoicism, not detachment, but ruthless clarity about what deserves your attention. The Stoic Marcus Aurelius, writing 4 centuries later, kept returning to this principle: focus on what's in your control. The knot wasn't in Alexander's control. His response to it was. That's where the power lies, not in solving every puzzle, but in choosing which puzzles deserve your sword. So what does this look like in practice? You're stuck on a project. You've spent 3 weeks trying to make it work within your company's constraints, the budget, the timeline, the approval process. None of it's moving. You could spend 3 more weeks. Or you could ask, is this constraint real, or is it inherited? Can I reframe this problem entirely? Sometimes the answer is no. The constraint is real, the rule matters, then you work within it deliberately without resentment. But sometimes the answer is yes. You've been playing someone else's game. In that moment, you have a choice. Spend more energy on their rules, or draw your sword and cut sideways. The cost of Alexander's decision was simple: a knot. The benefit was 3 million square kilometers and a legacy that lasted 2,000 years. Most of us never even ask ourselves if the knot is worth cutting. We just keep pulling at it, assuming the puzzle is the problem, not the frame around it. The Stoic lesson isn't that you should cut your way through every obstacle. It's that you should know the difference between problems and constraints and choices. Alexander had a choice. He made it consciously. He paid the cost. He collected the benefit. That's not luck. That's strategy. When you're next stuck on a problem, at work, in a relationship, in your own head, pause. Ask yourself, am I trying to solve this, or am I trying to win at someone else's game? Is this not worth untying, or is it worth cutting? Can I reframe this entirely? That question alone will change how you move. Alexander didn't know he'd conquer Asia. He knew he had a knot in front of him and maybe 30 seconds to make a decision. He had incomplete information, like you do right now. He chose action over endless analysis. He chose his goal over the puzzle. he chose to move. That's the real power of the Gordian Knot story. It's not about being clever, it's about being clear. Alexander saw a choice where others saw a puzzle. He acted on what he could control. Everything else followed. The question isn't whether you have the sword, you do. It's whether you have the clarity to know when to use it. That clarity, the ability to separate what matters from what doesn't, is what Stoicism actually teaches. Not detachment, not passivity, strategic ruthlessness about your own attention. Subscribe if you want to learn how history's toughest decisions reveal the Stoic principles that still work today.